Welcome to your unfiltered guide to navigating the workplace as a Black woman, the Black Womaning in Corporate America podcast with your host, Nicole S. Palmer. I am the CEO and founding partner of Delnick Media, an independent publishing company that amplifies underrepresented and marginalized voices. This podcast was inspired by my award-winning and best-selling book, Playing the Game While Black Womaning in Corporate America. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Black Women in Corporate America with your host, Nicole S. Palmer. I'm super excited to have her on today, and I don't ever like to steal anyone's thunder, so I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce herself to the folks at home.
Hello. So my name is Lauren Dike, and I'm usually terrible explaining or introducing myself, right? Because there's like so much, so little. But I guess to give people context to orient themselves to me, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. And currently, I am the CEO of a company called Harmon Inclusive Wellbeing. And really, we're focused on providing leaders and organizations with tools to not only reduce burnout, but also change the relationship with high performance so it can actually be sustainable. And
Yeah.
so we do a mix of one-on-one coaching, programs, workshops, speaking, and also retreats. And so, yeah, just a little bit about me, what brought me to this work. I spent about 12 years in corporate America. I was in real estate finance, which was really, it was a really intense, but also male dominated field. Yeah. And so really dealt with burnout in that context, but it was more emotional burnout for me rather than the work itself. And then I transitioned to diversity, equity, inclusion in 2020. And within that field, I had actually work-induced burnout, right? But also relational burnout. And so
Yeah.
all of that to say, I've seen all the different angles of burnout, which has been able to really equip me to be able to help people reduce it, if not heal from it in my work.
Yeah. And I love that you did that because typically I like to ask folks their origin story and you just wove that right on in there, which I love. But no, that was great. And what I also really like is that you actually went through this yourself, because I think sometimes it's easy for us to say, oh, I'm a coach of this, or, I do this without necessarily having that experience. But I think there's something so powerful about it's not unfortunate, sure, but there's something really powerful of turning your pain into your purpose. And I think that is what you are sharing with us today, that you embody, is that you went through these things and now you're in a position to say, hey, there's a better way to do this, especially for us
Yes.
high achievers, Black women out there that are doing all of the things. And we tend to, unfortunately, not only be the most neglected, but also a lot of neglecting ourselves, right? And taking care of what we need to take care of within ourselves. So I really love that you share that. And you just really want to talk about that, because that's really the theme that has been for me this month, is just self-regulation and burnout. And I feel like those things go hand in hand. And if you're not doing one right, the other one soon follows. And so I really would love to talk about that, talk the audience through that, because I think especially if you're not really seeing those signs, it's easy to miss them. So talk to us more about some of the things that maybe we, as especially in the workplace, especially in toxic workplace or high stress workplaces, what should we be keeping an eye out for?
So essentially, I think it's important to understand and define what burnout is from a physiological perspective, right? And what burnout is the body saying, I am over capacity, right? I have too much on my plate. And so I'm going to start to collapse your energy so that you conserve it, right? But when it's collapsing energy, it's not that there's no energy inside the body. It's all of this suppressed energy that needs to be expressed, right? And so you can think of burnout as like this giant suppression of authentic needs, but also the lack of recovery and space to process additional stressors. And so I think in the workplace, it's easy to burn out because when we're living under capitalism, right, it's designed for output, not for recovery.
Yeah.
And a lot of our workplaces do not have intentional means of recovery. Even like looking at a screen, right? The body is
Right.
absorbing this information and sitting still, that can put someone into a freeze response because you're overloading with information
Mhm.
and you're not moving. And so thinking about all of the moments during our workday that we're overstimulated that can contribute to burnout, but
Mm.
also the lack of authentic expression. And so when we think about Black women specifically and what society has conditioned us to have to do, things like code switching, right? Being cognizant for being perceived as the angry Black woman, that is
Yeah.
authentic expression that's suppressed and leading to the
Hmm.
energy collapse within us. And so
Wow.
I think when we're having conversations around burnout in the workplace, it can't just be about to-do lists and deadlines, but also
Mm.
protective patterns, survival patterns that people have had to adapt within their lives to get by, right? And how do we help them rewire those patterns, heal from them, but
Yeah.
also create a space where it's safe to be our authentic selves?
I've never actually heard burnout described that way, but it's such a powerful descriptor when you think about there's this suppression and then there's an internal collapse that happens.
Mm,
And it's such a fitting way to explain what that looks like for us, because I think that we don't often realize when we're brushing or putting aside our feelings or our emotions of something that continuously happens to us in the workplace, that builds up, right? And has to go somewhere. And if we're not expressing it
mhm.
outwardly, it's going to turn itself inward, which is
Yeah.
pretty dangerous. And I think we all have stories of that, unfortunately. We all wear the scars
Mhm.
of being in those positions where we do get to that breaking point of the burnout because we are not allowing ourselves to just be outside of the
Mhm.
performance that we have to put on, or the mask, or the
Yeah.
way that we're expected to show up at work, which is so important. And so I'd love for you, we have this really clear definition of a burnout, of what it is and how it manifests itself. Talk to me about self regulation, because it's something that's new that for me, I only learned really about it through you, and have the opportunity to have, the
Mm.
conversations, and even that experience that we shared at a previous event. And so I'd love for you to talk to our listeners about self regulation, because it may sound very lofty, but I think one of the things that I learned through just being in community with you is that it's attainable. It's something we can do for ourselves. And so I'd love for you to tell our listeners more about what that self regulation looks like, especially when we're looking at either trying to avoid burnout or trying to maybe come out of the tail end once we've gone through it.
Yeah. So self-regulation. So it's interesting because I think when people hear the word regulate or regulation, they just think it means to calm down, right? But what regulation is the body's ability to modulate through different experiences and not get
Mm,
stuck. And I think
mm,
this is important because I'm a prime example. I'm someone that had suffered from anxiety induced depression. And when I experienced anxiety,
mm.
it was like I couldn't control it. I would take deep breaths, it wouldn't stop. And it made
Right.
sense because I had suppressed energy inside of me from trauma and chronic
Mm,
stress that was making me go into this hyper arousal that was really hard to calm down just from what am I trying to say? From deep breaths, right? And
mm.
so for a lot of us, there's different stages and approaches to get to self regulation. So, for example, meditation for some people can be life changing. For some people,
Mhm.
it can trigger PTSD and psychosis. And so,
Oh,
the
wow.
key to regulating, yeah, the key to regulating is actually knowing what nervous system state that you're in. Because some people might be in
Mm,
fight or flight, some people might be in shutdown, some people might be in a blended state called freeze, right? And from
mm,
there, really understanding how to express the energy that is trapped in your body, right? Sometimes the energy needs help coming up. Sometimes it's bubbling at the top and it can automatically discharge when you're doing a certain movement. And so, really, with regulation, there's two steps, and it's really being able to move energy through your body, right? So that you
mm,
can actually create the capacity to then be with the charge of your emotions. Because if you can't be
mm.
with the charge of emotions, you will continue to either go into hyper or hypo arousal. What you want to do is be able to be with your internal experience, let it move through you, and then move on with your day, right? But a lot of us, we're
Mm.
feeling these charges, we can't move through it. And so we either
Yeah.
suppress it or we lash out or we overeat or we have
Yeah.
alcohol or we doom scroll, right? It's about being with your internal experience. And that is
Oof.
easier said than done for a lot of us who have gone through trauma, right?
Yeah.
And so regulation is your ability to modulate through different experiences and not get stuck.
Sitting with your emotions. That is such, ooh, that is heavy. I'm
Yeah,
just thinking
it
about that
is
because I know
heavy and
I
it's
had,
hard.
it's very hard and we want, and I think, for some of us, I know for me especially, when you're having to sit with your emotions, my knee jerk reaction is flight. Like, you don't want to. Like, I want to run away from them. I don't want to deal with it. And that is something you just unlocked for me, just having this conversation, is how we cope with it, and even realizing our relationship to food,
Mhm.
how that comes in, because
Yeah.
you don't want to sit with whatever it is you're feeling, with the anger, the sadness, whatever the case is, and so you turn to something else to distract you from it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to sit with that one.
Yes. Yeah,
That,
and it as someone that
yeah.
used to be, I mean, I still am an emotional eater, but I was actually
Yeah.
like a binge eater. And it all made
Mm.
sense because also when you get activated, all this blood flow goes to your head to strategize and think and all of that.
Yeah.
So when you eat something heavy and comforting, all the blood flow goes down to your stomach. And so eating actually does
Yeah.
feel grounding, but
Mm-hmm.
it repeats the stress cycle because then your body's trying to process all of this over eat and this
Right.
all the overeating and the
Hmm.
processed food. So it becomes this perfect cycle of like I'm grounding myself,
Yeah.
but now my body's going to another stress response, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's yeah, I'm gonna have to unpack that one with my therapist. Because that, yeah, it's just, I mean, and it's, and I, what I love about what you do is that it's so not just relatable, but it makes sense to like the everyday person. Because I think sometimes what could make us
Hmm.
shy away from this practice that you do so well is that it seems hard to do. Like, I don't get it, I don't understand it, and you make it so practical. Like, oh, that makes so much sense to connect those two pieces, how they go together, and you can actually see those patterns unfolding in
Hmm.
your own life and realize, oh, okay, yes, that is a thing that I do.
Hmm.
So that is so powerful, and I thank you for sharing that, because yeah, I'm learning stuff too. Okay, this is not just for y'all; this is also for me. So this was a selfish invite on my part, because yes, I'm unpacking some stuff for myself. Um, so I really really love that, and talk to us more about. I mean, maybe some of those. I know that there's all these. They tell you like, okay, 7 signs you're heading to burnout, or 10 things to look out for, whatever they come up with. But I think sometimes it can be very subtle or innocuous. And so it's not always like this big
Hmm.
flashy thing that happens. Sometimes it's much more like subtle, and I think in a lot of ways insidious. And maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that, like some of the things that we should be looking out for that could potentially mean we're headed down not the greatest path, or maybe down the path to burnout, that we should be keeping an eye out for. I think especially for my Black women out there, because I know we like to do that. Strong women, I know we talked about burning the cape this year, last year. We talked about all these things, and but we're still picking
Hmm.
up that daggone burn cape. So definitely let's talk to my Black overachieving women that are out here and not even realizing that they're heading down the path to burnout.
Yeah. And you're right because what's tricky is like we all have the same nervous system, but we're all
Mhm.
bio individual, which means like my twin sister could show burnout in a different way than I do, right? And so I
Yeah.
think very generalized understanding, yeah, understanding that burnout is usually related to the freeze nervous system state, right?
Mm.
Because shut down or collapse is more like if I'm in a car accident and I'm literally like paralyzed. People don't stay in collapse for too
Mm.
long, but freeze,
Right.
again, more of a blended state. So you're a mix of like wired and tired. And within
Mm.
freeze, some people show up as more functional and some people show up as more collapsed. And so,
Mm.
on an emotional level, right, what you're trying to do is eject things because you're above capacity. And so it looks like
Yeah.
being less social. It looks
Yeah.
like maybe overthinking and trying to eject going into your body so you're constantly in your head. It looks like again
Yeah.
that wired and tired feeling. Your metabolism might slow. Feeling just irritated, right?
Yeah.
And so typically it can show up like that. And if you're more functional, it shows up with like doing everything on your to-do list, going to work, but then going home and you're too lazy to like empty the dishwasher or go to the gym or work
Mhm.
on that side project
Yeah,
that you always wanted to.
right.
Yeah. And so typically, if you feel like you're spending more time and feeling exhausted, feeling cynical, not wanting to do things and being social, but also not
Mhm.
doing things that you're passionate about, that is a sign that you're either in burnout or at the least heading towards there.
I think that's what's so important because I know that for me, when I went through my own experience and I wound up hospitalized from the job that shall not be named, I had there were things like little signs here and there, but I wasn't registering them the way that I needed to because it wasn't anything grand or like these big shocks to the system. It was just a chipping away over time. And then, but instead of like going,
Yeah.
like to your point, outwardly, I was just internalizing everything. And I was like, I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it later. And then later came and the bill was due and I wasn't ready. And so my body said, well, we're just going to do it ourselves. And that's that.
Yeah.
So that is such and it could be so also kind of dangerous, I feel, unfortunately, for us because sometimes we ignore the signs until it's much too late. I think even though I ended up in the hospital, I was still fortunate enough that I got there because not all of us have that
Mm,
same story. So it's so important to listen to that. And I think that is really what's been really heavy on me is that we really need to start listening. We, especially with all of this noise that is out here, with the news media and all the nonsense that is happening. I think more so than ever, we need to find ways to self regulate. And I know it's different for everyone, but what
yeah.
are some simple ways that we can begin to do that? I love some of the, you share a lot of exercise you can do, like right at your desk. You know, some just kind of some either
Hmm.
short or brief exercises, something that we can just take a moment and actually find ways to do that. It doesn't necessarily need to be like 60 minutes of hot yoga or whatever the case is. It could be something really simple. And
Yeah.
you, the expert and practitioner, I would love for you to tell our listeners what that looks like. Just something you could do every day, just even sitting right in front of your computer or not.
Yeah. So a lot of the work that I like to do specifically with Black women is understanding like intergenerationally, but also the systems we live in cause us to be in a constant state of bracing, right? And so we're stuck bracing in between worrying about the future and replaying the past. And so
Yeah.
bracing, literally, our bodies are tense and constricting. Like if you notice right now, like right now, I'm noticing that my thighs are clenched, right? And so a powerful thing to do is this when you're sitting down, seeing if you can just soften all the parts of your body, right? Unbrace. And as you unbrace, your body is orienting to the safety of now, which means it's actually regulating, right? Because dysregulated means your body is orienting to the future or the past. And so just simply taking time to take a deep breath in and just unbracing, bracing and feeling the support
Mhm.
of your seat up against your back, your seat
Yeah.
supporting your sits bones. I love to do that just to soften. And then
Mhm.
also orienting to the present. And so, again,
Mhm.
looking around your room, up, down, side to side, really slowly. And you might start to notice that your body sort of drops again because it's realizing,
Mm.
oh, I'm here now, I'm safe,
Yeah.
right? And so, those are simple tools that you can do any time of day as frequently as possible. And what you're doing
Mhm.
is you're creating modulation in your system, right? I'm bracing for the
Yeah.
future. I'm settling into the past. I'm bracing, I'm settling. And eventually your body starts to build the neuroplasticity to do it more automatically. And so it's really
Mm.
powerful. And then I think just simply, if you're depending on like, if I'm anxious, what do I do? Shaking. Because when you're anxious, your body wants to discharge or mobilize. And so
Mm.
brisk walking, shaking, even doing like really fast breaths, your body just wants to move faster. And so if you can help it do
Yeah.
that, you help to discharge that stress. So again, it doesn't suppress. And then lastly, just want to give people tools for every state, right? If you're feeling in a freeze state, so like burnt out and overwhelm, that energy
Yeah.
doesn't feel safe to come up. It's saying I'm suppressing because it's too much. And so to
Yeah.
help it come up, gentle touch. I always like to say like do a self hug. That
Mm.
touch is helping the energy feel safe enough to come up. And then once it comes up, you might feel anxious, right? Because burnout is fight or
Right.
flight that's suppressed. And so once you
Right.
feel that anxious energy, that's when you would start to shake.
Take it
And so, yeah, I think just high level,
off.
yeah, high level, those are some really simple things. You want it to be simple. You don't want this whole to-do list
Yeah.
because you were already overwhelmed. You don't want more overwhelm.
Right.
So those are great places to start.
Yeah. That is something any of us can do. It doesn't require any special tools or equipment, which is another thing that I love. These are just things that you can
Mhm.
just do practically at home any time of the day to just help orient yourselves. And I think even that you're mentioning about how we're always in two states, either in the future or the past, and not really in the present. And that is so true because I can feel like you're already thinking about, well, what do I need to do for tomorrow? Even though you're supposed to be in this moment, your brain always wants to be, starting
Mhm.
to think ahead or even think back, like, oh, did I remember it? Just random thoughts instead of just orienting to where you are right
Yeah.
now. And that's a simple thing that any of us can do. And they don't teach this stuff to us at all, and they need to. Like, this is the stuff that we need to be
You
learning.
don't. Yeah, it needs to be. Yeah. And again, like as Black women, a lot of this is intergenerational. We came from slave, right? Like slaves didn't have a chance to do this. So it makes sense that our systems don't
At
feel safe
all.
to do this, right? Or even our
Right.
parents, they
Yeah.
had to work in a different way. And so I think it's really crucial for us when we're talking about, breaking generational patterns. That's one of the most
Hmm.
powerful things we can do of like appreciating the safety we could actually feel in the present that our
Yeah.
ancestors couldn't.
I completely agree. And I think even if we are not, we're still feeling, I think, the effects from the slavery and all of the things that happened because it manifests differently. So you mentioned about it being a capitalist society and especially this country. And so this idea of working all the time, working, without slowing down, that's another way it manifests because if you don't work, then you can't provide for your family. And then what are the consequences of that? And it might even not and I'll speak for
Yeah.
myself because I shame I speak the truth, shame the devil. But so I myself, even on my days off, I still work. I still like, well, I have a couple of, hubby's still sleeping, so let me just get a couple hours of work in. And it's just like it's muscle memory. Like I don't even think about it. I just do it. And what would happen if I just said,
Yeah.
it's my day off. I deserve to have this day off, and maybe I'll just sit and do nothing, and I'll just sit there for a moment. Even just something that simple, I don't even know that we realize that it could be that simple and yet that powerful. To just say, I'm not going to work today. I'm
Exactly.
not going to go to my computer screen today.
Yes.
And I'm actually preparing myself because we're supposed to be taking this vacation. I'm actually preparing myself to not take my laptop with me, which is going to be like the first time in like, I don't know,
Good.
probably
Yeah.
ever. But I think that in itself is a powerful yes to you saying you deserve to be in the moment and not and realize that the world will not fall apart if you don't check your email today. It's going to be okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I feel
I
that because
want
it's like
more
there's
of
this
us.
constant pulling. It's like, yeah.
I think especially I'm sure you can relate as a business owner, as someone who has their own business, like you feel like you always have to work. Like there's no such thing as a day off when you have your own business. You're an entrepreneur, you're, making your way and you're the boss of things. And so you do feel that extra pressure to like no one has to give you put the pressure on yourself like well no I can't just take a day off I have the buck stops here but we need to I think if we did more of those times where
Yes.
we just said no slow down we would have more time in the long run because we wouldn't have to have those moments where we are in freeze or we do kind of like internally implode sometimes because we've taken on too much and we haven't taken enough time to
Yeah.
just be. And that's what I want for more of us. We need to just be. Like I think we talked about doing like being hands off, but I want us to not just be with ourselves, to find more moments to just be present. Because I think that the more that we do that, the more we'll have left in the tank for whatever comes next. Because at some point, the hopefully this country will stop burning. I like to believe that. We need to have some type
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
reserves for whatever's going to come next. So that is, I got so much out of this just having this conversation. And, as I mentioned before to the listeners, I did have the privilege of being in a session with Lauren. It was phenomenal. I cried like a baby. And I had conversations with my inner child. And it was fantastic. It was honestly life changing for me. And I want every single Black woman that is listening and your friends and your girlfriends to have a similar experience because it will change your life. Like I still think about it because it was that powerful. And so yeah, I really do. All right. You guys see we have changed venues, but don't worry about that. That's what you do when technical challenges arise and you just have to go with the flow. So, anywho, one of the things I would love for you to share with our listeners as we think about ways of regulating and burnout, those two things, it could seem overwhelming. How do we really find ways to, balance between not burning out and also keeping top of mind of self-regulation? And I know that sometimes it can feel like information overload, especially if this is new to someone. So, what would be one thing you would want them to take away from this conversation that could at least help them on the path to either maybe averting burnout, or if you're already there, how to come out the other side to self regulate? What would be one piece of advice if you had to just give one? What would you share with our listeners?
Ooh, that's a hard question, but a good one because you're right. I think when it comes to if you're feeling just really overwhelmed with
Mhm.
life, right? Doing things are accessible to you and that work that can meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
And so right now, if you're realizing all I'm doing is worrying about the future, how can you just spend, even if it's 3 minutes a day, just focus on being in the present, right? And it might be uncomfortable and it might be 30 minutes to start. But as much as you can orient to the present, that's probably my biggest thing. Bring your body to safety that exists in a world that is chaotic and is overstimulating us. I think that is probably one of the best things you can do. And the more you do that, the more you build capacity to be with the present. And then you'll have capacity to do maybe the more intense things, like maybe exercise or eat healthier, right? But I think just starting there is what I would tell someone.
That is actually such a powerful piece of advice because I think it applies in so many different ways for us. And not to be a little corny, but you think about like, the present is a gift, right? That's what let's
Mhm.
call the present. And I think we spend so much time either looking forward or looking backward. And
Yeah.
we don't necessarily take stock of being in the moment at any given point. And I think the more we do that, the better off we will be anyway. So that is the piece of advice I'm going to take for myself. I need to write it down because I'm not
Yeah.
going to do it unless I write it down.
Yes.
But it's such a
Yes.
great piece of advice. So thank you so much for sharing that. And of course, not to leave the folks at home empty handed, we want them to know how to get a hold of you so they can have a transformative experience like I was fortunate to have. So
Yeah.
please let the folks at home know where they can get in touch with you. And of course, if you're in the Atlanta area, you do have a local practice, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So they,
So yeah, there's a couple of different ways. So my business is actually virtual. So I do one-on-one coaching
there you
virtually.
go.
So they can find me at www.harmona, HARMONNA.org.
Okay.
But starting in February, I will be hosting or facilitating somatic experience classes at a local studio called K Crew. It's on the
Nice.
west side of Atlanta. And so
Okay.
if people want to just release after work on Thursdays at 6:45, they can find me
Okay.
there. And then lastly, on social media, on LinkedIn, Lauren Dike, my last name is spelled Dike. And then Instagram, my handle is Harmona Wellbeing. So lots of different ways to keep in touch.
And we're going to, of course, have all of that information in the links below, wherever it is you listen to this podcast, so that you can get a hold of her. So, yeah, guys, if you are in the ATL area, you can go and see the hostess herself in person. You
Yeah.
know, because if I was an ATL, I definitely would be taking advantage of that.
I know. I wish
So,
you were.
well, but pretty soon you're going to be you're going to be on tour. Like that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to have to catch you when you're in the DMV and catch one of your marvelous sessions.
Yes.
So Lauren, thank you so much for your time. This was phenomenal. I certainly got a lot out of it, and I know the listeners at home will as well. So thank you so much for joining. And as always, as we say here, until next time, folks, take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to Black Womaning in Corporate America, the podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, or submit a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And don't forget to grab your copy of Playing the Game While Black Womaning in Corporate America, available now wherever books are sold. Until next time, take care.